what gets you motivated? I mean, what gets you feeling truly ambitious? And I'm talking about that kind of ambition that's not just, oh, I'm excited or I'm inspired at the moment, but the kind that gets you to take consistent action towards your dreams. Well, you're in for a treat because today I'm talking with Peter Voogd. Now, Peter is an expert on this subject. At age 23, he was already earning 6 figures, and he was earning 7 figures just 3 short years later. 7 figures, that's millions of dollars. He has since gone on to coach thousands of entrepreneurs that are in that millennial category. So I'm in that category, you know, I'm in my 20s. Peter is as well. But these are the kinds of people that we want to be attracting to help us grow our companies. So even if you're not a millennial yourself, Peter's advice on getting motivated, and particularly getting millennials motivated, is extremely helpful. We talk about a lot in this interview in a very short amount of time, so buckle up, you're in for a ride. Well, Peter, it has been a while since we last talked. We talked right after the release of your last book, 6 Months to Six Figures, which of course has gone on to be a bestseller on multiple channels. And I really appreciate you coming back to talk about what you're doing next. I appreciate it, man. And I can't believe it's been that long, almost a year. It feels like it was like 2-3 months ago. So I'm excited to be back, man. And you're doing some big things, and I love what you're all about. So I'm always glad to connect, man. Well, our community at Voogd really loved our last post and had not just comments online, but lots of comments in person. So that's a sign of someone who's really delivering value. So I wanna appreciate you there on that, Peter. I appreciate that as well for you, man. And I love to not only add value, but really help people become more aware of what's possible. And I think the interview that we had really got out some good information in a short amount of time. And that was thanks to you with the good questions too. So always here to help. Well, we'll keep it quick. I want to dive right into what you're doing right now because I really appreciate how you're not just doing what every other online brand or every other online tech company is doing. You've really tried to go a different direction with this next thing that you're releasing. I don't want to give too much of it away because I think that what you have to say about it will be really interesting. But I've listened to a few tracks coming up on this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're launching on December 22nd? Definitely. So it's been 5-10 years in the making of me really being in the trenches, motivating millennials, training over 5,000 of them, literally hiring, firing, one-on-one conversations for the last 10-11 years. And I really believe that millennials are poised to drive the future of business. There's 53.5 strong millennials in the workforce right now, and it's going to surpass Generation X. So it's the biggest workforce ever. And I think with millennials, they have all these innovative ideas. They're very relevant. They are not only innovative, but they love networking. They're tech savvy. They're quick learners. They're highly educated. But most people don't know how to motivate them, keep them retained, or even attract them to their companies. And I've been very fortunate to be around a lot of them, and I know what motivates and what doesn't. So I wanted to bring a new relevant way to motivate millennials and not just make them feel good in the moment, Matt, but motivate them and create sustained change and sustained results past just the current motivation and inspiration. So we're coming out with a motivational mixtape that's going to mix music with real valuable content and make them short and powerful tracks, 4 to 6 minutes. We've done a lot of surveying. That's one of our newest things this last year or two, is doing surveying with 30, 40, 50,000 people within my circle and my email list, and doing things at conferences and seminars and masterminds. And I found out, which is scary, and I don't know if I should say this, but I'm all about being real. The average millennial right now is listening to 7 to 10 minutes of a podcast. And how long would you say in your experience are most podcasts that you listen to? Give me an estimate. They're 40 plus minutes easy. I mean, Tim Ferriss podcasts are 2-3 hours. So it can be pretty long. Exactly. And I'm not downplaying podcasts. I listen, and I have a little bit more of an attention span. Mine's probably 15, 20 minutes, but the 45 to 2 hours is goodbye for millennials. Now, if you're relating to people that are 40, 50, 60, 70, that's probably what they really love is that type of motivation that's drawn out, which is fine. But I wanted something more relevant and more new. And for me, Matt, the toughest of times that I've ever had, 2 things got me through those. And maybe you can relate, maybe not. It was music and it was motivation. inspirational content. Now, not just inspirational quotes. We'll talk about that. Like we saw the article together.
You know, I'm going to call you out on that.
Yeah, things that spark my mind, as well as music. Music gets you in a different type of emotion, and I just wanted to mix both. So the two main things that really we bring to this is the music and content that's never before been heard by me, by some of the interviews I've done. So that's kind of the simplicity of it, is the motivational mixtape. And this way people can listen and feel good, and we want to shift their emotional state and really get them to be in a different state of mind, but also give them relevant content that actually is tactical and comprehensive that helps them. So we want to mix these stories and mix these tactics and strategies I've learned with music to make them feel a different type of way, to get them to take action. So we want to experiment.
So we're both millennials, so we both kind of have our opinions of what's motivating. But I'm really curious, you said you surveyed 50,000 millennials. What did your data show, and what did some of the third-party research that you do show that is most motivating to millennials right now?
So one, they want to know that you're new and relevant, and that you are congruent to what you say. So the first thing that really stood out is they value integrity and congruence from the leaders and innovation from the companies over money. And 89% of millennials prefer to have flexible hours versus a 9-to-5. And here's the scary thing I studied and learned. And this is from, I believe it was Huffington Post or a couple other publications were congruent on the data. But the reality is millennials value networking and flexibility and freedom over pay almost 9 out of 10 times. Yeah. So the reality is, if you're not authentic and if your marketing material doesn't match what you promote in the interview, and then that doesn't match what actually happens as far as the company expectations and the follow through the leader, the BS meters for millennials is so high, Matt, that they instantly lose respect. So I think it's congruence from the leaders is huge. And they also want to be part of something that's relevant, that's innovative, that's new, fresh, and values their opinion and values their feedback, because they're very, very sharp. But if they don't feel understood, it doesn't matter if they understand you. If they don't feel understood, they're not going to want to perform, and they're harder to control because they don't settle as much as older generations. They want to do things that they love. They want to do things they believe in. So if a leader, it's so easy these days to be a manager, to tell people what to do. If they don't do it, then you fire them. But that's a sad way to operate, and millennials don't stand for that. So that's a couple of them. Another one is, if you don't follow through on your word, or if you're promoting to show up early and then you don't show up early or you show up late, subconsciously, the younger generation, and I've motivated so many of them, they lose respect for you subconsciously. So what happens is leaders don't understand that their office and their culture and their tech company and their overall community is a reflection of them as leaders. So if they're not performing, you're not good leading them. If they're showing up late, it's because you are showing up late or you're not holding them accountable. So I think when managers and leaders take responsibility and they stay authentic and genuine, they're going to attract a lot more of the millennials, because like I said, they can tell when you're BSing or when you're not congruent, or when you're just in it to get them to do something. And that's a problem. A lot of companies are still doing that, promoting what's in it for them versus what's in it for the actual workers, entrepreneurs, employees. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense to me. And it really relates to that article that we referenced earlier, that you and I were talking about lately, is this article that came out, I think it was on Vice, and then I saw it, go on to all the other publications after that. So I don't actually know where the original source was. But the headline was something along the lines of, people who post motivational quotes to Facebook are dumber than people who don't, was sort of the gist of the article.
Oh, I love that article. Keep going.
So my question to you is, how does the motivational mixtape position against all of that content, and what does it do differently? And also, how did that article hit home for you?
So I fully agree. And the funniest part of the article, and you could link it below if you want, or we can share it.
Oh, I'll definitely link it up.
They made up a bunch of kind of foo-foo random quotes, and some people were like, oh my gosh, I'm so inspired, when the quotes didn't even make sense because they're so philosophical. Yeah. And they said that the more excited they got about the quote, the lower of intelligence. And one thing I realized right away is because it's easy to like a quote, and anything that's easy and doesn't take any actual courage or guts is no value. So people that are pumped about quotes, I think it's a cop-out instead of taking action. They'd rather like quotes and be inspired than actually get out and execute and hustle. So that's what I think. And for the mixtape, we went through for the last couple months and really took all the content out that wasn't A, relevant, B, tactical. There's no theories. This is all based on experience, my success and failure, and the motivational things that I taught my team that actually got them to act. I have a track called Two Different Worlds that talks about how we had a 10-day challenge the first 10 days of our company. And whatever they sold the first 10 days, we had a record board. And it was interesting when you think about this, Matt, that my two record breakers, they made $5,000 to $10,000 in a week and a half. And one was 18 years old. So to make 5 or 10 grand in a week and a half when you're 18 without much experience is pretty great. And then the other person was 28, but they're from two different worlds. So one person had everything given to them. Their parents were multimillionaires. They were very entitled. They wanted to quit when things got hard, and they've never been challenged. So I called them out. And the other person was going to get evicted, was from a very rough area of New Orleans, didn't have anything given to him. He was used to people giving up on him, and he had to survive. And I finally gave him a chance, and he was able to break the record. And the other girl, I challenged her and called her out. I talked about the conversation in the mixtape, but I called her out. I said, don't be like everybody else. You've always used your parents' income, and no one feels like you can do things on your own. This is your chance to show people who you are. And I motivated them two different ways, and they both broke our office record. So two different worlds, but they both had high results because they both had compelling reasons. So I think when you understand and get to know millennials, besides just posting quotes like you're talking about, that's irrelevant, and I don't feel like that does anything past the current moment. When you see a quote, Matt, you're like, wow, that's a great quote, but then what?
Right.
You know what I mean? So I actually penetrate and get a little bit controversial and call people out, because that's what I think motivates younger people, is when you're real with them and when you deal in reality. And I think people are scared to deal in reality. So I get pretty controversial, and I talk about how a lot of companies are calling millennials useless, and they're calling them entitled, lazy, which of course there's a percentage of them that are. But the reality is, if you know how to motivate them and hit their hot buttons, and you actually take time to get to know them and you believe in them, even when they let you down, they will shock you, and people don't realize that.
I think that's so right on. And actually, something that was launched earlier this week aligns perfectly with that, which is actually someone who's really big in the world that I play in, which is the tech world, is Gary Vaynerchuk. And I know he's a mentor of yours as well. But he recently started doing the Daily V, which is his daily podcast, where it literally follows him hour by hour as he goes through his day and shows the real work and sweat that goes into it. I think that plays right into what you're saying about being authentic, being aligned with not just saying inspirational and motivational things, but doing the work and showing that you're doing the work and showing up every day. So I think that's such a great example. Does that kind of align with what you're trying to do here with the mixtape?
100%. And we want it to be a catalyst and a movement. And here's the reality. When I was running a sales team, we had 150 sales reps, 11 or 12 employees, and we could not, Matt, get people to quit if we told them to quit. If we're like, quit, it's too hard, they wouldn't quit, because our culture was so dynamic and it was so different. And we promoted that this was a catalyst to get them to the next goal that they had. We didn't care if they were there for 6 months or 10 years. A lot of companies now are promoting that their company is the answer. Stay at this company. There's no better companies. That's the exact opposite of what they should be promoting. They shouldn't be afraid to lose people. And you shouldn't fear people if you're a leader. And if you fear people, then millennials won't relate to you and you won't attract the best ones. So for me, I would go up to my best guy in a meeting. I would say, hey, let's say you were my best sales rep and you were winning scholarships, making 6-figure incomes. Hey guys, Matt obviously is one of our best, he's our superstar. But if he leaves tomorrow and he goes to Google, I'm going to say, hey Matt, I hope you had a great time. I hope I can help you get to your next dream job or your next contribution. I will do whatever I can to make sure you get that position. So whether Matt's here 2 days or years, it doesn't matter to us. We want to launch him into his best contributions, because that's what we're all about. So pick 2 or things that you promote in your company that's relevant to what's in it for them, not your company. So here's what I promoted to a lot of our millennials that we worked with that were our real game changers. I mean, we had people so consistent, Matt, and they had to create their own appointments. They had to be self-disciplined. They had to show up at the office, make phone calls, sell to consumer. Very incredible job. And it's not easy to be self-motivated when you're 18. Parents can't even get them to mow the lawn or to make their bed. And we were getting them to show up at the office at 6:30 a.m. to make phone calls. Pretty crazy. So I said, we're giving you experience that stands out past the resume, so you're not in a sea of applicants. You have meaningful experience that really can help you catapult your next venture. We help you create an amazing lifestyle with flexibility and freedom, so you can work on your terms when you want. And we want to make sure that you're creating amazing relationships and networking with some of these people that you're going to know for a long time. And lastly, we want to create amazing memories. We want to create amazing memories and long-term relationships for you. Some of the people you meet in our office, in our culture, you're going to have for the next 50 years. So it's not just about the income. It's about networking. It's about flexibility. It's about lifestyle. It's about experience. And that really related to the young millennials because it was about them. I would often say, Matt, guys, I know the team goal is important, but forget about the team goal. Forget about what we're talking about for the year as far as our goals. Let's just focus on you. What do you need to do to help your goals this week of making sure that you're providing for your family or making sure that you're pushing yourself so you can get your kid to school or whatever you have to do as far as what's relevant to them. So I think that's huge. That's what it does is it relates to them at their core. And I call them out. I call out a lot of people in the mixtape where all my experiences of, I mean, we can talk about this, but of action's really the name of the game. I had a lot of people in my office that would talk a great game at and say, I'm going to break the record. I'm sure you get this in your company where you have a new kid that's like, dude, I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the guy that shows you this and this and this. And I realized that they could talk like that because no one's ever had them back it up and no one's ever actually called them out on their BS. And talking makes up for action. So people talk loud when they don't have the action to back it up because it's so easy. But I called people out and said, hey guys, the louder you talk, I feel like the more insecure you are. So let your actions and results speak for you. In this office, you have to realize that a 4-year-old could talk and say something. So if you're telling me you're going to break the record, a 4-year-old can say the same thing. Just like listening to a podcast, Matt, that's easy. Who can listen to a podcast right now in this society?
Anybody.
Anybody, which means
anybody with access. Yeah.
But it's not valuable, right? Starting a podcast and executing on a plan of content, that's the value because people can't do it. Reading a book, it's not hard. A 5-year-old can read. Taking the information and mastering it and executing it consistently and knowing what information is relevant to your business and actually taking that action, that is the power and the value. So I talk about things like that and realize I give people tools that they need to understand in this new economy to get them ahead of the game versus theories and fluff that make them feel good in the moment but don't actually produce any results past that current moment.
So how do you take that initial motivation and inspiration? So in that office scenario, when you've got kind of a young buck that comes up to you, and it's hilarious us saying young buck, right? Because we're both in our 20s. But you've got a young buck that, you know, maybe they're straight out of college or just starting college, but they're interning with you. That comes up to you and says, I'm going to break the record. How do you harness that intensity and that passion and translate that to action? And when is the right time to engage that person and direct that energy and inspiration into taking action, being truly motivated?
Good question. So you make them back it up by showing me that they're serious. So guys, when I talk about this record and when I talk about these prizes you can win and all the things that can happen, you're going to get excited and you're going to want to take action. You're going to want to yell that you want to break the record. But I've realized that talking really doesn't mean anything and it's action that proves that you're serious. So here's the deal. If you're serious, I'm going to be here early tomorrow at 6:30 or 7 a.m. and I'm going to walk through how to really maximize the next 10 days. I'll give you some extra tips and I'll give you some extra attention and time. And this shows me who's serious. So if you have something come up, you don't need to call because we base everything off action. So if you're serious, show up tomorrow at blank. And we'll assume if you're not there, you're not serious. So that's the first step, Matt, is telling them to do something that actually shows they're serious versus talks about it. After I have the meeting, I tell them what's expected because the biggest key to helping people understand what's possible and expectations is giving them clear expectations, making sure you have accountability, but telling them what's going to happen before it comes up so they're not shocked. A lot of the reason we've realized through surveys that people quit jobs is the expectations aren't met or people only talk about what's good about the company and the hype, but not the bad. So I say, guys, if you're going to go for the record, the bigger the goals, the bigger the challenges. If you have big goals these next 10 days, you're going to have challenges come up, and they're there to test, to see if you're serious. And if you get past those, you're going to get big rewards, because think about it, guys. If it was easy, everyone would do it. So in the first 2 or 3 days, you're going to go through challenges and rejection, but you have to make sure you have a goal that pulls you past those challenges so you see the end result of maximizing your 10 days. So I continued to give them goals to hit, Matt, that were action focused. Make a list of a certain amount of people. You need to make 40 calls a day and track that and bring me this list. We're not going to base anything until you actually execute on the first 3 days of action I give you. So once after the 3 days, when let's say 3 out of the 10 people actually followed through after those 3 days, those are the ones I fully work with and gave my all to. And they're the ones that usually 9 out of 10 times crushed it and made over 4 or 5 grand the first 10 days. So it's just giving them action to follow through on and letting them know it's all about the execution. It's not about what you're going to do, because anyone can talk. So if you talk, it shows weakness and insecurity, and you're making up for something that has to do with action. So I just shifted the perspective and I gave them something to do that shows they're serious.
So I'm an entrepreneur and I'm online every day. So I see all kinds of different programs. I see all kinds of ways I could further myself in my career. What if I'm a skeptic and saying, I don't know if this thing is really for me? Who is this motivational mixtape for, and who is it not for?
Perfect. So, and I will let you know this. I learned this from Tony Robbins 7 or 8 years ago. He was talking to Frank Kern and some other people about skeptics and about haters. And it was really interesting, and they really dove in. And I'm not saying this to you that you're a skeptic, but for people that are skeptical, it doesn't take any guts or courage to be skeptical at all. It's so easy to be skeptical. So I challenge people to appreciate and be open, not to this mixtape, but in general, in life or opportunities, when they come to you, skepticism is the easiest thing. And as we both see all day long, skeptics and trolls and haters online, oh, this is negative, I'm not doing this, this is bad, this is a scam. It's so easy to say that. Believing in something when other people don't, or doing your due diligence and researching, is really takes some courage, and it takes some actual confidence. So I'd say who this really for is, it's for people that value legacy and value being the best at what they do over security and over income or money. I think it's for the millennial that has a deep desire to really be the best, to express their creative genius, and to create something that outlasts them. I think this is for people that felt bottled up, Matt, in school, and people told them what to do or what they're worth, or they have that entrepreneur spirit where they can't stand when someone tells them exactly when to show up, when to leave. And I'm not dissing 9-to-5 jobs, but I want people that understand how powerful they are. And I want this mixtape to be something where in a couple of years, people say, because of that mixtape, I didn't give up, and I was able to purchase these properties, build a 6 or 7 figure business. And because of that mixtape, I was able to push past my insecurities and push past all the doubters and make my dreams a reality. So it's really for the entrepreneurs that value legacy, lifestyle, and freedom over security. And it's for people that feel like their intelligence is not matching their bank account, or they haven't connected the dots yet, Matt, where they're super talented, they have a lot of wisdom, they have innovation, but they don't know how to put it to something and make money or make an impact. And really that's who it's for. Anyone that's hungry to take their game to a whole new level and can take some criticism and can take me calling them out on certain things they might be doing, because I really believe that the things that you don't want to hear sometimes are the things you need to hear the most. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And it's so cool to hear you talk about who this is for and realize it's not just for millennials. No. It's people that have some of the same characteristics and qualities as millennials. Some of the things of valuing freedom and time over, money and security, which we both know isn't even guaranteed in the 9-to-5 job.
No, 100%. And I was going to pull up the track list, and there's certain things. Here's a scary stat. We're the most educated generation of all time. Facts, based on bachelor's degrees and MBAs and stuff like that.
Sure.
But it's the highest unemployment rate. which is crazy. And there's 300 and something waiters and waitresses with MBAs and bachelor degrees, because we're taught to go to school because that's what our parents did, and that's what they wanted to do. But at school, we're not taught how to become more valuable. We're not taught how to really be different and differentiate yourself from the majority, how to figure out what your strengths and your creative genius is, how to network. We're not taught that. So we have all these waiters and waitresses moving back home because our parents were saying, hey, you can do anything, but they didn't give us the actual tools. And they're teaching things, Matt, that were relevant 25 years ago. And I call them out. I say, did our parents, not literally me and yours, but a lot of parents that are teaching their kids to go to school, get a secure job, work your way up, those aren't secure anymore. And did people growing up in the 50s, 60s, 70s really love working 40 hours a week and praying for the weekends? Did they really love having someone else tell them what they're worth or when to leave? Did they really love saying no to their kids because they had to work? I don't think they really love that. But they're pushing it on millennials because they don't want to see them hurt and they don't like seeing them struggle. But that's what entrepreneurship is. You have to go through the struggles to actually become more valuable and get the courage to see success. So there's this mix-up that's causing us to be frustrated. And then, of course, all the news people, all millennials are useless. No, you're just a horrible leader. That's the difference. So I say a lot of that stuff not to make people feel bad, but to make them understand why our society is how it is. And I just want to get out my perspective. I'm not right or wrong. I just want to give people perspectives that they can take for themselves and use to hopefully better their lifestyle and better their choices and eventually lower all the regret. Does that make sense? That's a big answer, but that's one of the...
It's a great answer. And Peter, what you said really hit home for me. And I think what a lot of people maybe don't understand in that 9 to 5 job is that, while they're maybe working 40 hours a week and they have to be there for those particular 8 hours every single weekday and they're praying for the weekend, we're over here and we're working 60-hour weeks in our 5-day work week and praying for the weekend because that gives us an extra 5 hours on Saturday and an extra 3 hours on Sunday to work on some of the projects in our jobs and what we're doing with our passion projects that we just didn't have a chance to hit during the week. We're not even praying for the weekends to be away from work. We're praying for the weekends so we can put more time into these things that we truly believe
100%.
in. And I think that's what really resonates with
and
millennials.
we're both millennials. And the reality is, think about getting a corporate job where it goes against every fiber of an entrepreneur's body, where it's like they tell you exactly when to show up. And what I've realized, I was talking to Chris Ducker about this, I think it was Chris Ducker or Grant Cardone, one of those two, where they try to squeeze every ounce of productivity out of you and pay you as little as possible so their company can grow, but you can't. And they disguise it with all the promotions and things like that. But I think at our core, millennials want to be free and they want to express who they are. They don't want other people to control them and put them in a box. And I think school puts people in boxes. And if you speak out, you get reprimanded and you want to be like everybody else. That's what they want you to do. But the reality is entrepreneurship's the exact opposite. So I think that's why so many entrepreneurs are coming out, or people want to be entrepreneurs. And like Gary Vee says, this is the greatest time of fake entrepreneurs in the history of entrepreneurship too. So I teach people how to not be wantrepreneurs and how to actually be an entrepreneur. I talk about sacrifice. One of my tracks is called Sacrifice, where I studied Mark Cuban and Oprah and Michael Phelps and Michael Jordan and LeBron and all these top people, even people like Beethoven and Pablo Coelho. Is that Paulo Coelho, the writer? And all of them had a period of sacrifice where they missed every weekend. Michael Phelps worked 5 years straight with no weekends. Mark Cuban didn't take a day off for 7 years. Oprah worked every Sunday to get ahead of the competition. And a lot of the millennials don't understand what it really takes. It's freaking blood, sweat, and tears, hustle and grind 7 days a week. When I made my first 6 figures, then eventually 7, it was from working my ass off and telling my family I could not go to events. I couldn't go to weddings. They didn't ask me to go anywhere anymore because I would say no to everything because I saw the bigger future. And I think a lot of millennials that are entitled think it's easier than it really is. You know the grind. You know the hustle. You know working Saturday night when all your friends are like, Matt, let's go out and get a drink. Sorry, I got to get this interview out. And it's 10 o'clock at night. So I want to help them understand what it really takes. It's called Real Grinding, and I call the next track after that. And it gives them actual tips and tactics on how to make sure that you're maximizing your time. And yeah, it's exciting, man. I love it gave my creative juices a chance to get out and just share what's on my mind. And these days you can get out whatever you want without having to go through a big publisher, a record label, or all these big companies. You just get out what you want to get out, and if it's good, it'll be heard.
Well, Peter, I could talk all day probably about that particular topic of hustle and grind, because I think that there's a good end of that and a bad end of that. But maybe we have to share that for, save that for another time, because I want people to check out the Motivation Mixtape, first of all. So where can they go to find that?
So ambitionmixtape.com, they can actually get 2 tracks before they're released. So I'm not sure when this is released, but this releases December 22nd. And they can get 2 tracks at ambitionmixtape.com. They'll tell, it's going to be on iTunes and Spotify and Audible, I believe, and everywhere else. So yeah, I'd love to get their thoughts on what they think about it. And the key is just, I want to educate and inspire in a new way and get people to think differently and realize the power of self-confidence and having the ability to create whatever they want. So ambitionmixtape.com, I'm super excited to have you a part of it and to get it out there to the world. I'm excited.
Likewise, Peter. And for the people that are listening, I want to acknowledge them for being people that are willing to make a change, that are willing to put in the work. Instead of, watching another thing streaming on Netflix, or instead of listening to another podcast, they're listening to this one that's focused on taking action and really making a difference. So I first want to acknowledge the audience for that, and people in the Verge network, people in your networks. But then also, I want to acknowledge you, Peter, for putting in the time and effort to do something different here with this Ambition Mixtape. And I can't wait till it comes out, because I'll be sharing it all around the internet.
I appreciate it, my man, and I'm excited for everyone to experience it. And thanks again for you building the legacy that you're building and really staying focused on your mission and your vision and impacting as many people as you are. Let's continue to change the game, my friend.
Likewise, brother. Let's do it.
All right, talk to you soon.
Want more secrets from inside the minds of entrepreneurs and innovators around the world? Subscribe to our YouTube channel here and click the link below. We'll send you our best interviews and strategies for growing your business.